Most old school campaigns don't end with a dramatic total party kill. TPK for the win, folks. And they don't finish with a cinematic sacrifice against the pit fiend, or a legendary final boss fight, or fighting a dragon, or any of that stuff. They die quietly. They die boringly. Right around level 5, 6, maybe 7. And here's the thing, you probably didn't even notice it was happening at the time. The tension just evaporates. The players show up, they look at their character sheets, they look at each other, and somewhere around the third session of clearing rooms with no real consequences, everyone realizes the stakes are gone. Nobody says it out loud, but the dungeon stops biting. The wilderness becomes a minor inconvenience, and the game slowly fizzles out because nobody knows how to challenge a party that has outgrown the copper pieces. Today, we're going to talk about exactly why that happens, why your piles of treasure are actually killing your campaign, and how classic BX procedures are designed to step in and fix it, if you let them. This isn't a house rule, this isn't a modern patch. This is the game working as intended. You just have to know where to look. Now, let's look at the actual trajectory of a standard BX campaign. At levels 1 through 3, you don't really have to do much as a ref. The resource pressure is built into the game at the component level. Every 10-foot pole, every iron ration, every single flask of oil. The players are terrified of the dark because torches burn out every 60 minutes, and wandering monsters love the dark. They are terrified of combat because a single kobold with a lucky roll can send a veteran fighter back to the character creation screen. Every copper piece matters because in BX, that copper piece is literal experience points towards surviving long enough to reach level 2. The friction is palpable. It's real. It's a survival game where every decision carries genuine weight. And then something shifts. Right around level 5, the party survives the local dungeon, they clear the lower levels, they beat the regional villain, and they hold back the horde. The fighter has plate mail and a +1 shield. The magic user has third level spells. Fireball has entered the chat, and the whole tactical calculus changes overnight. And most importantly, the party ledger shows 12,000 gold pieces sitting in a chest under the floorboards of a tavern they now own. This is the exact moment where the wheels begin to wobble. And here's where most refs make the mistake that ends the campaign. They do what modern game design tells them to do. They make the monsters bigger. More hit points. Bigger damage. Another template on the goblins. But if you do that in an old school game, you have completely missed the point of the system. BX is not about scaling the math to maintain an artificial tactical challenge. It is about a fundamental structural shift in the type of game you are playing. And the system tells you this if you read it closely enough. When gold stops being a survival resource and starts piling up with an obvious drain, the dungeon stops being dangerous. If the party can afford to buy out every healing potion in a 3-town radius, hire 40 crossbowmen to sit outside the dungeon as a private security force, pay a local credit to stand by as a neutralized poison retainer, then the baseline friction of the dungeon crawl breaks down completely. The choices stop carrying weight, and a choice without weight is just a formality. So how do we fix this without just punishing the players for succeeding? How do we keep the torchlight and parchment pressure alive when the characters are no longer beggars scrambling for survival? We do it by enforcing the macro-level procedures that most refs quietly hand-wave away to keep sessions moving. Let's start with the transition from the dungeon turn to the domain turn. See, wealth in VX is not designed to be hoarded in a passive vault like a modern retirement account. It's volatile. It demands infrastructure. Around level 5, your players are approaching what the books call name level, the point where their characters stop being dungeon dwellers and start becoming political, economic, and military entities within the world. And this means that town life stops costing you a few silver pieces a week at the local inn. Think through the actual cost of reputation and lifestyle for a mid-level adventuring company. A level 5 fighter is not sleeping in the common room on a straw mattress. They have retainers, they have squires, they have specialist hirelings and armorers to maintain the gear, maybe a bowyer. Party needs a sage, a scout, and a cook that won't poison the war horses if they think that the party needs meat. Every single one of those people requires a guaranteed monthly wage. Whether they are down in a pit dungeon or sitting in a tavern waiting for orders, they're on a retainer. They need to get paid. If your party isn't paying a significant portion of their monthly income just to maintain their operation, you are letting them exist in a geographic vacuum the game never intended. So here's a concrete breakdown. This is the structural drain that keeps the treasury active and the game meaningful. Retainers, they get half shares. That's probably 15 to 20% of the total haul from each dungeon. Mercenary wages, 2 to 5 gold pieces per footman, 10 to 20 per horseback. Specialist retainers, 100 to 300 gold pieces per month. Sages, armorers, alchemists. Stabling and feed. All right, 5 silver pieces per mount per day. Well, that's still 15 gold per month. Urban lifestyle upkeep, 50 gold per character level per month. Rumor and intelligence network. You need to know where the next finds are, right? What the next big bad evil guy is, where the next horde is. 100 plus gold pieces per region monitored. When you start adding those numbers up, that 12,000 gold piece horde starts looking like a working capital fund with a hard expiration date, not an infinite piggy bank. The players now have to choose between maintaining their military edge or hoarding their cash. That choice is what brings tension back to the table. The resource pressure doesn't disappear at level 5, it just changes scale. At level 1, you track torches. At level 5, you track supply wagons. In the dungeon, we count turns. In the wilderness, we count days. And at mid-level, the party is traveling further from civilization into deeper, more dangerous hexes that require real expedition planning before anyone even gets on a horse. You are not tracking iron rations for 4 people anymore. You are tracking bushels of grain for 12 war horses. You are tracking the daily wages and food allotments of 6 teamsters pulling supply wagons. If the party wants to spend 3 weeks trekking into the blighted desolation to find the Lich's tomb, that expedition needs a line item budget drawn up at the city gates before they leave. And here's the payoff for doing this properly. One bad wandering encounter that spooks the pack mules can destroy half their food supply. And suddenly a mid-level wilderness trek becomes a desperate survival crawl before they even see the dungeon entrance. The logistics are the adventure. If they ignore the logistics, the wilderness kills them long before any monster gets the chance. This is the system working exactly as intended. The Overland travel clock is not busy work. It is a mechanism by which the game maintains pressure on characters who have otherwise outscaled the standard dungeon encounter. At level 1, Finding a +1 sword is a miracle that reshapes the whole campaign. At level 5, the party has a golf bag of magic weapons, rings, scrolls, and they're treating them like consumer electronics with reliable on-off switches. And that's a problem. Magic items in old school D&D are not stable. They're not predictable technology. They are strange ancient relics from civilizations that may not have spoken any living language. Do your players actually know what the wand does? Or are they guessing based on the color of the wood and hoping for the best? Identifying items should not be a simple pearl and 1 hour procedure. It should require hiring a sage. And sages are notoriously expensive. In addition to being arrogant, stationary, and slow. They want rare manuscripts. They want access to private libraries. They want weekly retainers that would make a baron wince. Suddenly, that, 5,000 gold piece hoard gets cut in half just trying to figure out whether the glowing ring is going to turn the thief invisible or into a ghoul. And furthermore, and this is the angle most refs miss, magic items attract attention. A fighter walking through a small border town with a blade that glows like moonlight is not just an adventurer. They are a walking provocation, not just for thieves, but for local lords who claim ancestral ownership of that specific relic. The item itself becomes a resource drain requiring security, discretion, and diplomatic management to simply keep. The magic item isn't a reward anymore, it's a responsibility. Now, none of this is meant to punish your players for being successful. This is not an arbitrary rug pull because you're frustrated that they beat your dungeon. The goal is to show them that the world is alive. The world is reactive. That friction scales with their footprint. And as their footprint grows, so does the weight of the world pushing back against it. If they want to store 40,000 gold pieces in a local border fort, someone has to guard it while they're gone. And the local baron has absolutely noticed that kind of wealth moving through his territory. He's going to want a cut. He'll call it a tax, a tithe, a forced loan to fund his ongoing border war with the Western Orc tribes. If the players refuse, they have made a powerful political enemy who can close markets, arrest their hirelings, and deny them entry into the entire region. If they comply, their goal drains into a meaningful world-building event that changes the state of the sandbox going forward. Either way, a decision gets made. That decision has weight. Now, another quick reference for building these gold drains into your sessions. Taxation. Local lord's going to want 10%. I don't think you're probably paying your own taxes. That's nothing. Secure storage. The town vault charges 5% per month to hold large sums. Information costs. Spending 100 gold pieces on rumor networks multiplies the accuracy of what you learn. Attention. Any hoard exceeding 5,000 gold pieces in one location attracts D4 thieves in a week. Automatic upkeep. Charge lifestyle fees on day one of any downtime period before the party has a chance to spend elsewhere. Now, as an aside, I put together an OSE-based reference package for mid-level BX campaigns. Link will be in the description. It's 100% OGL, so feel free to share it. Stop trying to fix your mid-level campaigns by doubling troll hit points. That's a design hamster wheel that leads straight to burnout for you and your players. Instead, look at the logistics, the retainers, the wilderness travel, the political obligations, the institutional costs of becoming a legend in a living world. Turn the gold from a scoreboard into a furnace that drives the whole campaign forward. The system already tells you how. You just have to run it. Now, before we wrap up, Massive shout out to the Tavern's minions. We are pushing hard. We're pushing hard actually to 1,000. We have, as of current count, approximately 850 Tavern members. And that community is what keeps this channel independent and laser focused on pure old school mechanics. Thank you so much. If you're finding practical value in these deep dives into how BX actually works under the hood, join the minions. Hit subscribe. Check the affiliate links below. Join our Discord. Every bit of support keeps our corner of the OSR strong. Now, I want to hear from you. How do you handle the mid-level wealth explosion at your table? Do you enforce stronghold mechanics early on? Do you let your players find creative ways to go broke on their own? Drop it in the comments. Stay safe, keep your torches lit, God bless, and I'll catch you in the next one.